All right, so it seems we're live, and hello everyone, and welcome to another expert session number 96. It's so cool. Just before I start and introduce our guest today, just introduce Evolve. We are a private working environment that connects board level leaders, senior operators, advisors, and fractional executives across global commerce and adjacent industries. And our expert sessions, they exist to examine how decisions actually play out inside organizations once ambition meets constraint. They're not about frameworks or inspiration, but about responsibility, trade-offs, and execution at scale. So, sponsor, let me just thanks our sponsors today: VTEX, commerce platform powering global retail experiences, and our Meet, the platform that enables our global and virtual and hybrid events. So about our guest, Kevin Ertell, he's a former global vice president of retail stores and operations at Nike, where he operated at the intersection of strategy, frontline execution, and global scale. Across leadership roles in large retail organizations, he repeatedly encountered the same pattern. Strategies that appear coherent at the top often lose force once they reach day to day operations. That observation sits at the core of his book, The Strategy Trap, which he argues that failure rarely comes from weak ideas and more often from organizational conditions that make execution difficult or unsustainable. His work focuses. I can hear someone typing. Sorry. His work focuses less on planning and more on the systems, habits, and leadership behaviors that determine whether strategy actually moves. So, Kevin, welcome. We are joined also by our co-hosts, so some heavy hitters. I'm really happy that they're here. We always start our sessions with a controversial question. The controversial opening question for you is: at scale, does strategy fail because organizations struggle with execution or because leaders overestimate how much alignment actually exists?
First of all, good to be here. I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive, though. A weak alignment, not understanding alignment, is part of why execution ends up not working. So it all sort of goes hand in hand, and in the book, I go pretty deep into that right at the beginning about how you've got to build buy-in and alignment as part of building the strategy. If that makes
Right.
sense.
It does make sense. So let's perhaps start just with a bit of your background and why you decided to write the book. I think we've been building our relationship now for a little over a year through
Mm.
Edilsa, and it was really nice to speak with you the first time you mentioned the book in our first episodes on Voices. Amazing experience at Nike, Sualatab, and so many companies. So perhaps you could give us a little bit of your background and what led you to write this book. And I'm sure the gents here, they have lots of questions for you.
Yeah, I mean, I spent most of my career in retail. I started on the ground floor, working as a sales associate clerk at Tower Records. And that was an amazing place to start because I really learned the foundation of interacting with customers, and Tower very much believed in promoting within. I was able to run stores and build my way up. I was there for 20 years, and ended as a senior vice president of towerrecords.com, where we built the very first tower.com. Um, I moved on to other places. I was at Borders, where I ran the loyalty program there, and also borders.com. Took various roles at some other companies, CMO at Online Shoes. You talked about Sur La Table there. I ran digital and marketing and technology. And then I was at Nike for 7 years, in a few different roles. I left there and started my own business, Myster Advisory, where I'm really focused on helping companies build executable strategies, also do some executive coaching and advising. So that's just a real quick overview.
Brilliant. Thank you. Davi, perhaps you like to start, and so let's do this as always, like a conversation. You were the former CIO at Sonai, which is the largest
Mm,
Portuguese
retail.
group.
Yeah.
Yeah, massive group, many companies. So I believe you have seen a lot of what Kevin probably seen also during his experience working, in especially in Nike, which is a massive organization. So perhaps you like to start.
Yeah, the question on who is the to blame or to be aware of in terms of implementation of the strategy, it's really something not very easy to point out. In my view, it can be sometimes you don't have the right people on the table. So what happened in Sonai, sometimes the IT was not sitting on the table, and the IT matters are usually long term. Shouldn't be short term. Or then you don't have the metrics on CFO running for the long term, and they are too much focused on short term, and focus on that alignment that you were mentioning, getting the alignment between all parties, but not really focusing on the business proposition and business value in the long term. How do you think one can overcome that?
Mm. So in the book I talk about 6 C's, and the very first C is co-creation, and and I think co-creation is absolutely critical and foundational to creating an executable strategy for really three big reasons. One, that's your place to get alignment, it's your place to get buy-in, and it's your place to get commitment. And to do that properly, you have to have a diverse group of people creating that strategy. So to your point, you have to have people who are going to be involved in the execution, and if that's IT, it could be operations, whatever, um, and CFO or any kind of finance people to help you understand how valid what you're creating is. Are you creating something that's actually workable? And that is really critical. And I advocate also for multiple rounds of validation. So you might have a smaller group create the initial part of a strategy, but then you've got to start to go through a serious structured effort of validating that strategy, where you bring in a variety of people to poke holes in it, to find out where it's missing something critical, or it's making some promise that is not at all realistic. I really advocate a lot for slowing down to speed up. So take that time up front to work through all those levels of validation before you start unleashing it on the organization. If that, I don't know, does that hopefully make your thing sense? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And so everybody gets kind of heard in the beginning, so they don't feel left out. And even if you don't agree, at least you felt like you're participating and co-creating, as you're saying. That is a critical step. I'm fully aligned with that.
Yeah, and there's a couple of psychological techniques around that really matter. So, one, to your point, if you were involved, even if you don't agree with the final decision, there's something called procedural justice that we humans, feel like, okay, we've been involved, we put our say in, maybe we didn't fully agree, but we can get more bought in because we knew we were involved and people really listened to us. And then there's this other effect or psychological effect called the IKEA effect. So kind of funny, named after a retailer, but um, what it is there was these three professors who did the study, and they took a few different groups of people. And one group of people, they gave completed IKEA furniture. So they gave them, fully built stuff, and they asked them, how much is this worth? And there was another groups of people, they just gave them the boxes and had them build it themselves. The people who built the furniture valued it 63% higher than the people who just got the furniture. And it's the same piece here. So you get people involved, you get them making part of it, they will value what they've created at a lot higher level, and therefore be ready to commit at a higher level.
To which extension inside the organization do you feel that that involvement in the strategy design should be taken.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to do multiple levels of validation. So you might have a smaller group who do some of the initial building of it, but then I talk in the book about some different techniques you can use to put that strategy in front of other people to get them to weigh in on it. So we talk about some techniques called the 6 thinking hats, or there's one called a proposal to hit, where you go out there actively.
Vinny, we can hear the whiskey night tonight. Sorry, Kevin. Go ahead. Yeah, thank you, Vinny.
But taking the time to have those multiple levels of organization, give multiple people opportunity to weigh in on, hey, this is going to make sense or it doesn't make sense, it strengthens the strategy and its executable nature early before you start really broadly putting it out. So taking time to go out and reach multiple groups of people to validate it is, in my experience, well worth the effort and time.
My last question on this,
Yeah.
if I might, my last question is, that means that it takes quite a long time. So which is the time elapsed between strategy revisions, or what's your view? Should be every 3 years, because the world is faster, so the business are faster, and so people tend to go through strategies every year, but that seems quite hard if you take some time to just to spread it inside the organization.
I think it depends on the size of the organization, right? I mean, a bigger organization might take longer to do it, but a smaller one might be able to go a lot faster. But I do think you have to take the time to get it right up front. Because here's the thing. If you know, I talk about slow down to speed up. If you don't slow down up front, in my experience, you're going to slow down later in a much worse way. You know, because then you're going to get later and you're going to have something that's unworkable. You got to rework it. You got to redo things, what have you. So your full amount of time between strategy and full execution is faster if you slow down up front and get it right and build the right, you know, framing and for it before you start to go execute it. I was just talking about this the other day with somebody. We were talking about, it's kind of like if you're driving on a curvy road, you know, if you slow down as you're getting through those curves, you won't go off the cliff. But the thing is, when you come around those curves, you accelerate out of the curve. And it's kind of the same idea, you know, slow down to get yourself well positioned and then go fast.
Brilliant. Kevin, I like to, I'm going to invite Prakash and Vinny also to ask you questions. And again, this is a co-creation process. We're going through your book. That's something we developed within Evolve. We find it that it becomes richer when we invite our members also to, because they have
Yeah, there you go.
You know, so
Well done,
Prakash,
Carlos. Well done.
Not easy though, not easy to be here moderating this. I mean, brilliant minds, but it's cool. And I think one of the things that strikes me about, you know, like what you talk about, and I have someone in mind, which is Jocko Willink. Not sure if you know Jocko. He has this quite eloquent book about ownership, and he a SEAL, and he talks about having ownership, and in the army, it's, you know, imagine the army. I mean, Nike, massive organization, the army as well, but you have to communicate your strategy, cascade it down, right? And it has to be really simple, so people understand when they're in the front line. You know, soldiers, they understand A equals to A. You know, the information that doesn't get confused in there. And so I'm really curious about the role of communication, because, and the importance of communication when you're creating a strategy and you have to communicate it and co-create it with your team, right? So perhaps if you could talk a bit about it, communicating the strategy, because also for us here at Evolve to get to the point where we can talk nowadays what we do, and people actually understand. It took us 2 years, you know, and we're refining and still refining. But comment on communicating the strategy within the organization, and then also to the outside world, and then Prakash, you have remarks there as well and questions to Kevin.
Yeah, so I had a chance a few years ago to hear this a speaker, Kara Lawson. She is the coach of the Duke University women's basketball team, and she's also the coach now of the U.S. women's basketball team. So she was talking about how she talked to her players about communication, and she said it's got to be early, loud, and continuous. And the way she was describing that in basketball was like, hey, you got to tell people if you see something coming, get ahead of it. You got to be loud. You're in a big arena, and there's a lot of noise, and you got to keep saying it because they might not have heard you the first time. And I thought, that's actually a great way to communicate within business about a strategy too. Take really thinking about it in all these ways early, set the foundation before you even announce the strategy. You should be helping the team understand the conditions that you're dealing with, the reason you're changing, or you have a strategy, like really convince people about that. When you have the strategy, you've got to be loud. And that doesn't mean like volume loud. It means there's a lot of noise going on in the workplace. There's a lot of things happen with people. So you've got to cut through that noise. And then you have to be continuous. So there's this old psychologist, Ebbinghaus, I forget his first name now, but he had this thing called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And he talked about the fact that people hear something and 30 days later, they'll forget 90% of something they heard if it hasn't been reinforced. So you can't work. So you have to have like this really structured approach to the book. I wanted to make it something that would be easy for people to understand and then easy to actually use. And now I've sort of forgotten what the question was. Sorry.
No, it was a statement. The easy to use part, I think, is probably the biggest challenge because we all get so much information every day. It's putting it into practice and determining how does this make sense for our business, I think is part of the challenge. I kind of came to a conclusion at some point last year that I think the culture side of things is the determining factor of the success of the strategy. You talk about execution, and I kind of see them as, to your point earlier on, as kind of not mutually exclusive to each other.
Yeah.
And we see it time and time again where employees feel like they're really part of the organization. That even during bad times they tend to get through things as well. So that they're the kind of companies that I'm looking out for now, or brands or retailers that have really, really strong culture, because it'll allow them to ride the wave of a bad few quarters,
Yep.
or on the other side, really build on the successes.
Yeah, culture is critical. In fact, I have a chapter in the book about culture because I think it's critical to execution. And there's a quote I put in the book about it that comes from the restaurateur. I forget, Danny Meyer. And what he said is, your culture is the sum of the wanted behaviors that you celebrate minus the unwanted behaviors that you tolerate. And I thought that's such a powerful quote, and
Yeah.
like that's the essence of culture too. So if you do all the things we talk about in terms of making it clear where you're headed, and you have a culture like that has made it really clear about how you need to behave in order to execute on it, you're going to be in a lot better shape.
Amazing.
We're gonna open the stage now for our members, but in the meantime, there's something that I actually like to, if you all could cover, but this is for you, of course, Kevin, which is leaders inheriting strategies that they did not design, and what responsibility do they have to reshape them? Because I think this is so interesting. Like the same in the government, like maybe the former president or the former governor has created a brilliant strategy, and then there's a lot of ego. The new guy, new gal, gets on gets to power and say, I'm not going to do this just because. So how do you see that, Kevin? Go ahead. When you inherit a strategy.
Yeah, I guess it depends to somewhat. I mean, why do you have a new leader? Was the old strategy not working? What have you? So, but I don't think that as a new leader, you should come in and immediately change the strategy. You're going to whipsaw the team. And I again would point back to execution. How well are you executing? You could take an existing strategy and change the execution and get good results. You don't necessarily have to change the strategy. It depends on how the strategy was built, I think. But my focus always, I'm doing it right now here, the first focus was to put in place all the conditions for how well are we executing. Because again, I think we talked about the very beginning of the book, we talk about a so-so strategy executed well will generate a lot better results than a great strategy executed poorly. So I still would continue to focus on execution first.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. And so in the first 90 days as a leader, what are your recommendations for anyone inheriting a strategy, or a leader who joins an organization? For example, your first 90 days at this company that you're supporting now, what do you do as soon as you join a company to evaluate their strategy and execution? What are the key things?
So I always start learning first, so I don't try not to have an opinion first. And I would go around and ask people their opinion about the strategy. And first thing you're going to learn is, do they even know what it is? And first thing you're going to find most likely is they do not, and so there's a lot of data on that too. So if you go around and talk to key leaders and they can't even articulate the strategy, then there you go. It doesn't even matter what the quality of the strategy was. You clearly you're not in an environment where it was set up to succeed. So I'd spend time on that first.
That's a wise man. Friends, go ahead.
Actually,
Yes.
I have. Go ahead, Franz.
Okay, thank you. I heard a lot. There are some similarities because the majority of you are focusing on retail. I have been working in business to business, but strategy is important. And if you want to implement a strategy or something else, the communication towards that is critical.
Mm-hmm.
I have been raised with what we called the 3 Ps: purpose, process, payoff.
Mm.
And you have to make it as simple as possible
Yep.
to get them aligned. If you don't get them aligned, your execution will be rubbish.
Yep.
So in that respect, I see a lot of similarities between, let's say, retail or business to business in that respect. To tell you, recently I was with a customer and I asked them, because they wanted to improve their sales, etc., etc., do you have a sales plan? Do you have an idea, a strategy? Yes, was the answer. Then I asked, show it. Did not happen. It was in their head, they said. Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yep.
So, Kevin, I'd like to see if you have a different approach by, let's say, introducing or aligning a strategy or something like that for business to business, or you do basically a similar thing, or you don't do it all at business to business. That's also a possibility, of course.
No, I work with all sorts of companies, but here's the thing: the industry. I think the techniques that I talk about are industry agnostic because they're about the people, not the industry. Because executing a strategy is about people and humans and how we work and how we interact. And, to your point, you have to keep it simple so people can understand it. And, the communication techniques I talked about earlier, those have nothing to do with industry. And I really, as I was researching the book and talking to people I talk to retailers, I talk to healthcare, I talk to people in sports and entertainment. I talked to one guy who runs a hydroelectric plant in Australia. So, totally different industries. Common piece was people. Common piece was, how do you get a group of people to understand and work in the same way and put their energy in the same direction.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Very cool. Who's next? Hendrik.
So, firstly, I have to start with an admission. The admission is I have not read Kevin's book. I clearly didn't get the memo to say that I need to buy the book and read it. So, firstly, my apologies.
Consider that memo now.
Thanks. I listened to today's conversation, and maybe I'm sitting on an island, but it felt to me like we were hearing the perfect utopia in which everything works situation. If I compare it to what I've witnessed in my own career at different phases, the one thing that nobody's asked anything about, which kind of made my head spin, was how do you deal with strategy in a case where you have political currents in organizations? I've seen it tear companies apart. I've seen it not work at all. I've seen it lead to people being shown the door. But as somebody that sits in the middle of nowhere, that deals with businesses all over the world, the one thing that is consistent is that we are humans and humans are difficult. So, Kevin, having worked for some of the largest retailers and e-com platforms in the world, how do you help brands, managers, groups to ensure that they don't get in their own way and it doesn't cause chaos? Maybe I'm out of line.
No, I love that question, and I totally agree with you. And there's a few ways that you do that. One is getting really clear about what matters most, how that is going to be measured, and what the right behaviors are. In my experience, a lot of the companies I've been in, they set up the incentives incorrectly to begin with, and that's what creates a lot of the politics.
Mm-hmm.
The second piece is, to your point, this is not utopia. Things don't ever really work right. The last part of that I have in the book is called coaching, and that is about dealing with the fact that it's not going to go exactly right, and you are dealing with people, and you have to think about how to motivate people, how to incent people, how to create the culture and keep people all pointed in the same direction. But most of the time, politics happen because people are fearful and they're trying to make sure they don't get fired, But if you haven't set up clearly what success looks like and what behaviors lead to promotion that are in line with the strategy and not just somebody's opinion, you get the politics. If you set it up very clearly up front that this is how we're going to behave, this is the goals we're looking for, these are how we're measuring it, you, in my experience, get a lot more people working in line and working together. Is it perfect? No, but you actually can compare it to sports teams. And if you think about, the championship football team, they understand their roles, they understand the way they're playing together, they're all working towards the same goal, they're being motivated the same way. There's a lot of similarity to sports, is why I kind of call it coaching at the end. But that takes time. The organization I'm working with right now, by the way, is a sports team. It's a Minnesota Timberwolves NBA basketball team. And so I'm seeing some of the ways that they interact here, and hearing from some of the coaches and how they set up the team to function is pretty fascinating. So yeah, I think that's what it takes, but that's taking time up front.
Thanks. That was really helpful.
That's a great segue to my question, funny enough, Kevin. So I'm a massive basketball fan and Australian, if you're not actually detecting the accent.
Yes.
And, I was having a look on your LinkedIn profile. I can see you're the Minnesota Timberwolves ticket revenue leader. And so I guess in basketball terms as well, it's very important you have leaders on the floor, leaders in the locker room, as you need, obviously, the right head coach and coaching staff as well. But there's the what we used to call the Australian mayor, otherwise known as Joe Ingles. Who's
I see him all the time.
He's one of your vets on the team as well. I mean, he's no longer getting much playing time. He's not a leader in the box score, but he's one of the things I know of Joe and people like him in Australian basketball circles is he's great at reinforcing things like coach's strategy, like just setting day-to-day standards of what it is to be a pro, and keeping everyone really aligned and along for the journey. So I guess, using it as an analogy as well, which is from your perspective, how critical is it to have those kind of internal leaders within an organization just to, again, champion the strategy, as well as it's not just from the top, but, but be able to do that from a peer-to-peer point of view to help drive performance and the result in general.
Yeah, super important. And I talk about it in the book in a couple different ways. One, when we talk about co-creation, I talk about you need to find your both advocates and detractors up front and bring them all in the room, so have them help create it to begin with. They'll become better advocates. Even the detractors, people who think this is a terrible idea, bring them in and have them be involved in it, because oftentimes, almost always in my experience, they end up coming out of it the strongest advocates you could possibly get. They've had their chance to weigh in. They said what they said, and maybe you've adjusted accordingly. So that's number one. Two, I talk when you start to actually implement change, you've got, this new strategy, you've got a plan, you're going to start putting it in, identifying specific change captains, I call them, who you bring in and make them part of the implementation process too, and know that they're going to be the ones out influencing others in the organization. So I try to identify those people who I already know have influence. You can see they have great connections. Bring them in, get them fully involved. I talked about procedural justice earlier. Make sure that they feel like they've had their input in the process, and then they will go out and talk about the strategy and the incentives and what you need when you're not in the room. So yeah, I think you have to be very intentional about that. And it's not hard to do. You can find those people pretty quickly and easily in any organization. So bringing them in matters.
Love it. Great answer. Thank you.
I might start thinking those as the Joe Ingles people now, though. So I like that.
Thanks, Luke. Howan.
Oh, Kevin, thank you for sharing your time and your knowledge with us. Since the beginning, I had a question in my mind that I have to ask that, and then Vinny just made the question, so uh, I had to think about something else. But uh, I just have one simple question for you. The book is called The Strategy Trap. So a simple question is, how can we find that a company has already fallen into the trap?
Well, the main strategy trap I talk about is when a company gets over enamored with the idea and the presentation of the idea and doesn't spend the time building the conditions for people to actually execute it. So if you're looking to see if they're there, was that strategy created in isolation without lots of other people? Is it overly complex? Because one of the things I talk about is how simple as it is. The third C I talk about is capacity. Do they just try to drop it in on the existing business? Do they say things like, we're just going to have to build the plane while we're flying it? Because if they do, that's a death trap. Like literally the metaphor itself is like, would you ever do that? And so you start to look at some of those different levels of traps. How are they communicating? Is there an actual communication plan? Is it early, loud, and continuous? How are they checking along the way, and what are they doing, in the end to actively manage it? These are all components of the 6C system that I talk about. But if any one of those are missing, chances are pretty good the strategy is going to suffer. You really have to sort of look at it, this full system, to keep. Hendrik said it before, humans are difficult, and like it's really hard to sort of keep people going, and you have to be so intentional for so long to do it. I always joke that like I've been with my wife for 25 years, and yet still we seem to have misunderstandings. So what makes me think that I could be perfect with people at work? So it takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So
I think just
Carlos, you have to leave. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a very short. I think the misunderstandings and the concepts we are talking about, it's really a very big derailer. So you think you are talking about the same vision, and actually when you build it up, you are talking about completely different universe, and
Yep.
it's really a death trap. Excellent. Thank you,
Yeah.
Kevin.
Thanks, David. Thank you. Yeah, well, I think we reached the end of our talk here, Kevin. And again, it's a co-creation. We are here to discuss your book, but also pick your brain and get people to interact. I think my main takeaway, and I hope I'm not being very simplistic, is that we are we're less McKinsey minded, and I said that, not you, and more focused on execution. Not so, not creating the beautiful decks, but living in reality. I think they're great, but you need to make sure that there's a market also, and that you execute those beautiful decks. So I want to thank you all first and foremost. These sessions are becoming super amazing with the co-creation of everyone here. Kevin, time to sell. So how can people find you and find your book and hire your coaching services and consultancy?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. The book is available on a lot of platforms, so Amazon for sure, easy to find it. You can find me on LinkedIn. I put my LinkedIn in this list here too. Also my website, misteradvisory.com, which is MISTERE advisory.com. It is. Did I mention it's 7 a.m. here?
Yeah. But no worries. Yeah, this is gonna be on. I'm gonna put the description for you on across LinkedIn and YouTube.
Awesome. Great.
All right.
It was great to talk to you guys. It was a fun conversation. Appreciate the challenging questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Enjoy getting back into the bed, Kevin.
Enjoy your whiskey night, Vinny.
I will, for sure.
Cheers.
See you guys.
See you guys. Cheers. Bye.
Yo.
Gosh, thank you.